Hi guys, how y'all doing? This is D Derell with D Derell Life Solutions. I hope everybody is having a great day. I'm going to do some content today focusing on a website and also a speech and engagement that I had today. If you want for reference, you can go to lovelanguages.com and you can check out this assessment that focuses on forgiveness. And when you click on the link, it will say apology assessment, and you can basically assess your ability to forgive in relationships or different life situations that you're involved in. So what I want to talk about first and foremost as we get started is that I attended a professional engagement today in which I was a key speaker, in which I focused on forgiveness as it involved relationships with people, no matter what type of relationship dynamic that one has. I'm speaking of things that involves your difficulty to accept apologies or accept forgiveness, or your ability to forgive others for whatever issues that come to mind. Now in this, in that process, as I was in this particular engagement, it talked about 5 key things that focuses on your ability to forgive. The first one is making restitution. In making restitution, you're basically focusing on the fact that even though someone is giving an apology or accepting an apology, what are you going to do to rebuild that relationship? You cannot just allow a situation to quickly have a simple apology, even if it's genuine or not, and there's nothing else to build on from that. So in making restitution, you're basically verbalizing a strategy or objectives that one will implement in order to rebuild that relationship, and you'll talk about interchangeably with that particular person how that will transpire. Request forgiveness. That's the second one. The second one is request forgiveness. In requesting forgiveness, which is in many situations maybe the first and foremost, the most important for anyone, particularly that's seeking forgiveness, is that you have the assertive ability or the statistical fortitude, or have the ability to want someone to forgive you for whatever they have done to you. So in requesting forgiveness, it's simply you inquiring about, these particular things happen. Are you going to make amends for what occurred? Are you going to forgive me? Are you going to talk about everything that occurred and what do you want from me for doing whatever issues that you are conflictual about? So to request forgiveness, it can be very difficult for one to develop the confidence to do that, because you never know how that person is going to respond to that. You don't know how they're going to react to you, or they may dismiss you and not even want to go any further and just let bygones be bygones and move on. But either way that may occur, you have to accept whatever that other person is saying, because it may not be what you expect it to be. Number 3, plan change. The third, which is plan change, is actually the third objective in forgiveness. And when you plan change, you're basically creating basically a plan. You're basically creating a strategy of how you're going to change over time, how you want that person to change over time. It's not simply saying I forgive is not enough. It kind of coincides a little bit with making restitution, but also in planning change. To me, that's within the context of that relationship, you're proving to that person overall, in the context of the longevity of that relationship, how you plan to change overall and not repeat the same behaviors. In the interaction that I had today in the speaking engagement, I repetitively talked about how you don't want to continue to say, I forgive. And also on the other side of that, you don't want to be in a position where you're requesting forgiveness, because if these things are occurring, it's obvious that there's something faulty is going on within their relationship, where one is consistently doing things that the other doesn't want. And then at some point, you have to reevaluate, is this really a productive relationship or a viable relationship that one wants to engage in long term? The fourth one, expressing regret. In many situations, particularly when you are requesting can I give forgiveness, you express that you regret. In many situations, one may feel guilty about what they did, may feel very bad. They kind of reflect inward of oneself as far as, maybe I shouldn't have said this, I shouldn't have done this, I could have made a better decision, I could have done something differently or done something better, maybe it was immature of me. In many positions when one is expressing regret, they may reflect on what they did in the past, and although they don't want to repeat that again, they want to let the other person know that, I'm really sorry, I really apologize, I would never do that again, that wasn't me. These are some of the typical phrases and rhetoric that one may articulate when they are seeking forgiveness from others. So I just want to caution people that whenever they are requesting, or let's say one is expressing their regret, you don't want to beat up on yourself long term. In many situations, that can cause a lot of anxiety and potentially depression, where you are repetitively rewinding a situation over time that can never be changed. At some point, you have to accept the mistake that occurred and learn how to rebuild from that, correct that, and be better for it. Allow it to be a learning experience for oneself. And lastly, but not least, as it involves forgiveness, you have to accept responsibility. And that may be the most difficult thing, particularly in forgiving someone or the person that is asking for forgiveness. To accept the fact that I am responsible for my own behavior, and I may be responsible, and for all intents and purposes, I am responsible for whatever that negative result, the negative result that basically that evolved from whatever decision that I made. You have to look in the mirror at oneself. You have to go into introspection. You have to realize the negatives of your behavior, the faults that you engaged in, and you have to accept overall responsibility, not only for the things that occurred at that present time, but also in the past, and also accept responsibility for anything that may occur in the future. The purpose of forgiveness, or requesting forgiveness and acceptance, is that once the forgiveness has been established, one moves on. We don't consistently bring this up and throw it in someone's face. You don't engage in reminding people of this over and over. And you don't want to be in a position where you're constantly asking someone to forgive me, forgive me, forgive me, because that means that you have consistently did something that required them to forgive you. And you don't want to be in that position. And I also preface this a lot within the speech and engagement today, that if you find yourself on either end of the spectrum where you're constantly forgiving or accepting forgiveness, then at some point you have to look at, what am I doing wrong? Why am I constantly accepting forgiveness, and why am I constantly requesting it? Because if these things are repetitively happening, you may want to look at the viability of that relationship, and also decide whether or not this relationship is toxic or productive. And one of the speakers that spoke, the professional got up that owned a 5013C, she spoke specifically about thinking about things that have occurred in her life with family members, and people who she has done wrong to, and so on. And one of the things that she found out is that she found herself as an individual consistently doing these things with other family members not necessarily listening to her. She may have came at them the wrong way. There was obviously negative, I would say negative interaction and vibes that occurred. There was obviously some dissension amongst themselves based on an array of different family issues, particularly death in the family. There were discussions about litigation, about property and probate, all of these different things, and how in response to these things, how people may change and act in a way that may be irrational, or may be deemed, they may be offended by that. And so in many situations, as I talked about this, and I was basically posed a question for many of the people who spoke, I talked about how in taking full responsibility of oneself, you have to look at the the time span between one situation to another, how redundant things may become, how this has become a bit too repetitious, and have we learned from these things overall? And the part of personal growth is that you learn from things and either you minimize or you extinguish these type of behaviors altogether. So those were the 5 major points in taking the assessment on lovelanguages.com. If you decide to go to it, you can assess and the percentages of what is most important to you, and then you can decide what things you may want to change and what things that you can improve on. And so you can be a person not necessarily about easily forgiving, but when you do forgive, it has meaning. Or when you ask for forgiveness, that you're not constantly in that position over and over again. I also like to say that, again, this is the second time that I participated in this engagement. I plan to do many more engagements in the upcoming future, and I'm beginning to network with more people. I have content that I may upload about these different things and the different topics and the interaction. And in each engagement, it involves an assessment and filling out the questionnaire, and then everybody reviewing and having an ongoing discussion, a very fruitful discussion about our results and how we differ from other people, how we relate to other people. And it made, for a good I say intellectual conversation about learning about oneself and about learning about others. Particularly as a clinician, I drew from my own clinical experience as far as how I treat people and gain insight into how people function in relationships as we deal with all dynamics that involves human behavior, human relationships, and overall interaction. So once again, guys, this is D Derell with D Derell Life Solutions. I hope that you enjoyed this particular video, and I will be, particularly when I interact in further speaking engagements that talk about different aspects of relationships and the human dynamic, I plan to discuss these things in summary with you all. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe to D Derell Life Solutions.